Okay, I've done it, finally. Right, 3.0, Heavensward. I have completed the expansion thus far. I've completed the base expansion experience, and it's time to have a chat. Because, well, yeah, it certainly is a step up from Realm Reborn, god damn. Of course, there'll be a lot more going on this channel, so, you know, get sub, follow along, we'll have some nice announcements as we hit November, and let's just talk about it. Okay, Heavensward. It's the expansion where our characters really learn and they grow, right? It's kind of where, rather knowing loads of people for a little bit, we do a deeper dive on a smaller core cast of characters and just go on an adventure. Realm Reborn is so broad. It had so much set up to do, you know, the primal whack-a-mole against the backdrop of Gaius's plans, which obviously then led into marvelous patch narrative content, especially as the Heavenswardy bits came in. And as for Heavensward, it is much different, and it really is you, Alphino, and Tataru sort of cast out, reeling from the end of a Realm Reborn's patches. That's the massive leg up that this expansion has. It is so well motivated. I mean, it takes place as you and all your characters feel kind of shattered from what you go through. You've got such a good reason to care for your companions. And if A Realm Reborn was about forming the Scions, Heavensward is about rebuilding them slowly and with more heart. Because we get to know these characters just in a more one-on-one close way and through a lot more of that shared trauma. This stripped down core cast just means more focus, more time with each character, and I really am just left with this feeling that this expansion is building the beating heart of the game's future. At the very least, from a character perspective, it seems to be doing that. Now, what's even more smart is the use of A Realm Reborn's final two patches. You know, characters like Lady Iceheart, Sir Emmerich, Lucia, Horschfont, they're all set up before you hit 3.0. And it's this blending, you know, of the final patches of ARR setting up Heavensward. It's this blending of the expansion storylines, and really just them all being one storyline. That's what's let them pace their character introductions perfectly. You know, you don't have those situations where you just have this big slog of meeting 500,000 new people or some big unwieldy, cast. It just paces it all well. So much of Heavensward is it being fantastic on its own terms, but importantly, it's also it cashing in on the victories of A Realm Reborn's patches. And that's important. It's not, oh, here's a new story. It's, here is the next big chapter that we know you've been waiting for. And as long as you're along for that ride, that's extremely exciting. It almost feels like it makes a WoW expansion almost feel like a new entry in an anthology because of the level of disconnect you can sometimes feel. And I've got to say, once you're on the ride with FF, you're in and you're going. Okay, let's talk about the pace of this big ride. All right, pacing. It is, bar a little bit in the middle, I would say, pretty much nailed. So while mostly it is A plot, Heavensward does of course have the B plot that is following on from the ARR politics. And they really get this bit good. So right as you explore for a bit, you begin to understand Ishgard society, you get your first surprise. And, you know, one bout of Ishgard justice system later, and they have built up the looming threat. And, you know, then you're whisked off to do a jailbreak. And there's just so many great things going on, and you really do feel quite pumped. And all of this plot, it's just so well set up and so motivated. And then bam, you're back in Ishgard, and the story is heavily building on the Iceheart plotline. You've met Estinian, and really, without you knowing it, the gang has kind of came together. It's all very smooth. I'd certainly say that it's shortly after the gang gets together, there is a bit of a pacing dip. I think they kind of run out of steam just a little bit with our first Primal. Now, of course, I get why, the Primal fights are very cool, we want to have them in the game, but just dealing with that, and was it the Dravanian... Anyway, it was a little bit of a sort of break in the pace. But shortly after that, though, I mean, it's Dragon time. You're getting your big revelations, ones that are going, really into the thick of the Dragon Song war lore, And from that, from that point on, it's just one big fast ride to the finish that is just packed with moments. I'm sure you know some of them. So let's talk about lore. I haven't been able to do this as much because I'm newer to the setting. I'll say I'm very glad that I did Bahamut before 3.0. Now, the Ishgardians, they really did just feel like a pack of wankers from the outset, right? With just how their society was constructed, them being a bit more sort of, cold to the Eorzean Alliance. But through characters like Sir Amric and Edmond de Fortemps, they start you to just get you liking these characters for really who they could be as an overall society, even though you can see their flaws. And I think that's the thing. Ishgard, it's a nation built on a lie. And for me, I do find that whole foundational myth thing to be fascinating. By the end, I'm now expecting that I'll be seeing this nation come to terms with what it actually did and essentially evolve. But evolve in the face of a threat that really doesn't give a shit that it's going to evolve. So, will Ishgard be less aristocratic? What will happen of the lower classes, the class structure? How will their religion work into all of this? And how are they going to basically perceive their sense of, societal meaning or whatever when the core of their faith has been shattered? So it's all operating in those, real nice levels. So I like the Ishgard lore, and much like with Ul'dah, it's really great to see Square actually tackle topics like this. There's more of a civilizational angle to things, and they actually give these stories the runtime that they deserve. I think that's great. And then we've got the dragons. I love the dragon lore. Especially if you paid attention to your Allagan history, and then you understand, the whole thing with the dragon's perception of time. It's a great way to have these dragons act as, yes, overarching villains on the face of things, but in a way where you really do get that they feel wronged by, and they really have been wronged. They're these immortal beings who experience yesterday's trauma very much as if it were right now. And you get the sense that through, all the things you think about a dragon, they actually are these very deep emotional beings that kind of carry the weight of millennia, of life experience. They've been basically oppressed for thousands of years and treated horribly, especially by the Allagans. And, the one recent time where they did find some peace, peace by, their perception of time, that may as well have been yesterday. What happened? Well, they're quickly and brutally betrayed. So sure, Nidhogg's response may not be the most reasonable thing in the universe, but when you take the Allagan oppression into account, the story of Bahamut, and it's really cool, you get to meet Tiamat as well, you get it. You do understand why Iceheart did what she did, and also the very human aspects that maybe led her a bit astray, and the assumptions that she had. And then there's just, the dragons are cool, right? The sound of their language, the way that they speak. They do not feel like beasts, and that does make them a compelling antagonist, and as far as they are antagonists, which isn't 100%. Now, all the while, of course, we've got the established primal lore running its course, things like that. It does truly feel like a game that is building and building, with the past revelations very much being woven into the current experiences. I'm certainly saying that, thinking about some of those cutscenes at the end. Look, most good stories do that. Obviously, they weave all their things together. It's just sometimes in segments of gaming, you're not used to that as much, and it's really nice to see it in an MMO that can also scratch all those MMO itches. So, there's some lore thoughts, some pacing thoughts. Next, I want to change gears, though. Let's talk about presentation, because, even though this had to run on a PS3, this is an expansion that looks and feels great. It's a step up from what I was used to. Now, much of the game, though, is in craft. The camera angles, the cutscenes, the way they do all of that. The way, basically, they use the limited tools that they've got to tell this story. They're clearly a bit more confident, a bit more used to their tools, and then the increase in voice acting quality has had a massive impact. Simply, you can really feel a line in a character when it's acted well, and here they are. That bit... smile better, it's a hero, glad that was voice acted. It really helped it work. So they've stepped up their voiceover game to a pretty absurd degree, honestly. Previously, Sam Riegel's Alphino, I thought that was actually pretty good, but for me, a lot of the other cast were kind of iffy. And sure, new alpha node does take like a bit of a second to adjust to, but like overall across the board, the VO is so much better and it really helps the game so much, especially when they use it so much more. And I have this sense that with a production like this, they can pretty much now pull off whatever they want. And it'll be exciting to see that as I move into, well, the patches, Stormblood and Shadowbringers, where, of course, time will pass and they'll get more used to their techniques and they'll develop things. And I mean, versus World of Warcraft as well, like, it's just the quantity of voiced lines, the caliber of, not necessarily the caliber of the acting, maybe the writing or the direction, like, it was just really strong here. I mean, no shit, they can tell a better story in FF14. They actually take their time to tell the damn thing. And that's important. I mean, put it this way, they could tell a worse story better, and therefore would come out ahead in terms of player experience. And I think all of this continually just shows me that with World of Warcraft, again, with its new narrative ambitions that it absolutely does seem to have, that it just needs to recalibrate itself and really think deeply about how FF14 can do all of this stuff so well, even though it's got a lower budget and, you know, doesn't have big expensive CG cinematics and all of that stuff. You know, it's about how it constructs its narrative. Actually, let's talk about narrative construction. So this is a bit versus WoW. I think it's just an easy way to explain to most of the people who will be watching this video what's up. World of Warcraft tends to give you very broad world building as you are leveling up through the new zones to the new level cap. The A-plot basically doesn't progress that much. And Shadowlands has been quite funny for that, you know? Even with all the quest content in Shadowlands, the core story feels super, super rushed. And I almost wonder if they would have been way better having, you know, a more trimmed down cast of characters and telling less of the broad lore, maybe cutting a few elements out, but, you know, actually having us deal with, say, Sylvanas as we're leveling up, and properly engaging with the A-plot of the expansion as we're playing the expansion. Instead of, you know, getting a guided tour of 4 different themed areas and then an A-plot that feels mega rushed and, you know, just so poorly supported by enjoyable in-game material that it falls over. There's lessons to be learned here, man. In FF, like, the plot is the plot. They don't hold things back for endgame, it seems. The whole thing feels like one big story with the patches just continuing the story. You know, just that here, the patches are adding to a complete, satisfying, and well-motivated core story, so it just feels like they have so much more to work with. So I guess it just seems to me that FF14's way of constructing a narrative within the constraints of an MMORPG is super successful, way more so than Blizz, and Blizz needs to take notes. If you want the story you're trying to tell now to work, then scrap the books. WoW, think deeply about FF14, get some emotes made that aren't hyper goofy, put the player in the story, and then have the confidence to tell that story and give your A-plot what it needs to shine. Gameplay then. Alright, dungeons, they're just better. It's as simple as that, really. There's more fun bosses with more clear mechanics. I mean, I've only done each one of them once, right? So, you know, take that with a pinch of salt. I've been doing everything as a part of the story, so I've not done, you know, the harder modes of the primals or anything like that. But yeah, it seems like fun content. Now, quest design, that's still the gameplay aspect. Now, that ends up not mattering that much, but, I mean, Blizz will often, you know, script more custom interactions and things in their quests. So, outside of duties, FF14 is a bit more simple, right? It's like, if we're going to move to a place with a bunch of characters, you know, they'll just give me 3 waypoints that I go to and it spawns a quick little encounter and I move on. And from a gameplay perspective, that doesn't feel mega good. Now, the thing is, though, that ends up not humongously mattering because your actions generally feel quite in alignment with the narrative, and they're able to work around seemingly some constraints of what they can pull off in a quest. So that basically means that traveling about and conversing and all of that, it does feel like gameplay because really you're there for the narrative experience. And I guess that is actually the thing, you know? You don't need to rely on the most intricate quest you can think of when the core storyline just gets people really hooked and excited. Now that said, I would love to see how this grows in Stormblood and Shadowbringers and where they end up going with their quest design and if they can really elevate the narrative in more ways than they do already. Okay, so some thoughts on this versus A Realm Reborn. I would say that 3.0, like, it does totally smash 2.0. Like, totally smashes it. I will say that ARR's patch ending, like, it felt more surprising and immediately engaging to me than the ending of 3.0. But, in a way, the ending of ARR patch was really like the ending of the first little arc of Heavensward, right? So I don't know if that's splitting hairs, but it does absolutely have me quite excited for what 3.3 and I guess 3.5 or whatever are going to be like, because it seems to me that they have set up the current situation so well. I mean, those end cinematics with, is it Adiblius? The ASEAN, right? And I'll get into a little bit of a spoilery about that. Like the setup with that, of course, what happens, the eyes, right? Like it's definitely set it up that like I've had a really satisfying narrative where I have dealt with one big core threat. And I mean, yeah, the whole Pope bad thing, some people will say that's like a little bit of a common trope, or, maybe it's something more common to like us or something here, but I still really did enjoy it with Thordan and all of that. So we'll see, but it just seems to me that versus ARR, they really do have everything like even better set up for future storytelling now, so I'm very excited to see what those patches do. Now, as I move into like a few more things, and of course, like, spoilers and etc. The Warrior of Darkness, what's going on there? He looks like Meteor. I am told that like all will make sense, but that was definitely a bit of a like, oh, what the fuck? It was like one of those moments. I mean, Meteor's there, but like I've always known there's been a thing here, and I know that like Meteor, like in the cinematics, like is the stand-in for the player character canonically, so I think they're just doing something interesting here. So it'll be very interesting to see where that goes, suffice to say. Other things then, I mean, the Dragon Song War, I know there's something called Ishgard Restoration, and I feel like Ishgard, like, it needs help, but it doesn't need restored yet, so I'm certainly wondering what's going to go on during these patches. Then, as I said, yeah, just that patch story excitement. I really am there for it, and I really am just wondering, I'm wondering what's next. And there's even nice little things, too. Like, I know I go to Doma, the Domans in Stormblood. But of course, in the Heavensward questing, I was like, the Roban jailbreak was with Yugiri, who's going to be a character in Stormblood. And it's just that sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, all these characters, they're going to be sticking around, right? And I think that's just really, yeah, really neat. It feels like, it just feels like it's as an overarching plot with all of its characters and all of its players and its pieces. It's just all quite well conceived and decently, it must have been all quite well conceived in advance too. It seems like they know where they're going with all of this, and I guess in a way where it feels like they don't have to cut and chop their narrative all the time. So it's just very, very satisfying. There is also the big moment, of course, Smile better suits a hero, right? I now understand where that line comes from. And I mean, man, yeah, that was a really well done scene. And especially too, considering the limitations that they're dealing with how their character models can act and all of that, like, they really did make that more than the sum of its parts. And that's just a testament to how well they've done all of this storytelling. All the stuff with the Horschfont as well is just, yeah, it was just sort of done perfectly, meeting him in the ARR level up experience, that he takes us in, and yeah, they set things up and they pay them off very satisfyingly. It's like those, the bread and butter basics of storytelling, they just do in a super solid way, and that is just something that gives me great faith in the overall IP, and it'll be interesting. I've heard some things about Stormblood that aren't the most glowing, but from what I understand, I think I'll actually like Stormblood quite a bit. I mean, thematically, it seems super up my alley, and then it's just thinking like what they were able to achieve with Heavensward, and then thinking about what people say of Shadowbringers, and like, it's newer, they'll be able to do more things. It's like, man, what a journey. Now, unfortunately, I do believe that the creator of Final Fantasy, he's thoroughly trounced me when it comes to MSQ progression. But look, I have reorganized things, I've rescheduled things. you should, I mean, I'll be into Stormblood pretty soon. I am feeling, man, it feels so good to be this in with a game and in with a narrative, and all those things I said in the past, like, they just stand so much. Like, I feel like my character is a character here. The other characters know my character, you know? Like, so whenever, you know, Y'shtola comes back, and, you know, for a little bit, it's the new gang going off together, and you just get a sense all these people know each other, they've got a shared history, it's all with my character as well. And that's what's been missing in you know, some other games. So, hats off to you, Creative Business Unit 3. You do a damn good job, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. I hope you're enjoying following along with my journey. It's been a very fun journey to do. Matt's working on a super cool video for the channel soon, very soon, so be sure to sub for that. Thank you for all of your support, it's been so much. And that's it for me. Have a wonderful day. See you next time.